Hello, everybody. How to Write Romantasy is available for pre-order right now, and you have the option to receive a free digital workbook that will help you craft a power couple, throuple, or polycule that readers will devour. All the details are in the description. Get on it. On to today's topic. You guys may know that lately I've been interviewing a bunch of romantasy authors, but today we're doing something different.
Are we doing something different?
Instead of romantasy, we're going to go in the complete opposite direction and interview a grimdark fantasy author. If you don't know what grimdark fantasy is, it's a fantasy world where everything is bad. So bad. The world is full of angst and danger, the characters are morally gray at best, there is violence all over the place, and if you're looking for a happily ever after, you're not gonna find it here. Which means today feels like the perfect day to discuss crafting the baddest characters around, villains. And I'm speaking with debut author and one of my favorite people in the entire world, Lizabeth Phoenix. Lizabeth Phoenix is a woman in the corner of the room, neck deep in coffee, face buried in her beloved MacBook. She's also hatching wild plots, dreaming up dragon names, and charting time traveler visits. Her life's goal is to write morally midnight characters and battle-cry-worthy victories because light shines brightest in darkness. When not writing or fighting the South Carolina heat, she spends hours immersed in the worlds of A Song of Ice and Fire and Elden Ring. One might say she's a little obsessed. Lizabeth's debut grimdark fantasy novel, The Gifted King, comes out on September 9th, and if anyone knows how to write a villain, it's this woman because her book is full of them. Thanks so much for joining us. I am so excited to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here. I am just, why can I talk until it starts?
It's all good.
It is just, it's so great. I could do this. I'm a professional. I am so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I am absolutely honored to be here, and I really appreciate what you're doing for the writing community. I've been keeping up with your videos for a while.
Oh, thank you so much. You are so sweet. I'm so excited to have you here. So this is going to be super fun. So let's start with the basics. How would you define a villain, and how do they differ from an antagonist?
That's a really good question. I feel like they do get mixed up a lot. So I think the clearest way that you can differentiate between the two is that a villain is going to be on your like amoral, like evil alignments. Like they're going to be toward the bottom end of the alignment chart. Whereas an antagonist is purely someone who is working against your protagonist. So in theory, if your protagonist is the bad guy, your antagonist could be the hero. But the villain is never going to be the hero. They're always going to be the one causing like the catastrophe.
That's what I'm always repeating to people is villains are antagonists, but antagonists aren't necessarily villains. And it's like, it's sort of how we distinguish, you know, like the antagonist could just be like someone from school, whereas the villain is like the handlebar twirling mustache.
Yes.
Like, I mean, like not that cliche, but you know.
They're the people with the most like fiendish intentions.
Yes.
Like whereas your antagonist is just trying to work against you, maybe do their own thing for their own means, the villain is like, I'm here to destroy things.
Right. I'm here
to
yeah, I'm here to commit evil. I love it. Yes. So obviously a villain has got to be pretty bad. How do you go about writing a frightening and threatening villain without tripping into the cartoonishly evil cliche?
That's a real fear. My suggestion usually is to keep the villain, you have to tread carefully, but to keep the villain as relatable as possible and as like realistic as possible. And to do that, you can really lean on their core wound. So my advice is usually to create like a really rough core wound that is both grounded and relatable. So I like to use Anakin as an example here, and going purely off the Star Wars movies. I have not read the Star Wars books. No one judge me. I haven't read them. But Anakin's core wound is that, you know, this is an oversimplification, but he's very afraid. Like his mom unalived in terrible circumstances, and then he's plagued with visions of Padme, like the love of his life, unaliving in childbirth. That is a core wound that almost everyone can universally empathize with, but that's what drives him to the dark side because he wants to stop it from happening. That's my advice. That way you can keep them both grounded and relatable. And even though your readers won't agree with the villain, hopefully your readers won't agree with the villain, but at least they'll be able to empathize with where this human being or being of any sort is coming from.
Yeah, and I think that's great that you mentioned relatability, because a lot of people hear relatability and they think likability. And it's like, just because you understand where someone's coming from, just because you get it, doesn't mean you have to like them. So it's like these are different things. Like, we get where Anakin's coming from, but it doesn't mean that we think, oh, you're this great guy doing great things. You know, that's not how it works. You can get it, but not like be about it.
Yes, like I can empathize with how you feel as a person with like emotions, but I don't have to agree with how you're approaching the problem. Like, where's the red flag guy? He's just gonna run back and forth for Anakin.
Right, exactly. And I love that we have that differentiation, because like I said, so many people, I think a lot of people talk about making like the sympathetic villain, and that's obviously an option. You can totally do that, but you can make someone relatable and you can understand where they're coming from without being like, oh, like I really, you know, like bless his heart, you know.
Maybe yeet yourself in the other direction.
This question was requested by one of my patrons over on Patreon, Ace. Some villains are pure evil, whereas some are morally gray with both good and bad intentions. How would you recommend writing a morally gray villain while still maintaining the fact that despite their better intentions, they are indeed a villain? Which is, we sort of touched on that a little bit, but...
That's actually a really good question, and thank you, Ace, for asking. In short, and then to like extrapolate, but in short, I would say you would look at the fruit of their actions, like the ultimate in-game result of what they're doing. I do want to say that I'm going to be as vague as possible, but I may briefly include some minor spoilers for popular TV shows like Breaking Bad and stuff. But for this question, I would like to lean on Walter White. Like, he starts off morally gray. He's gonna do a bad thing because he's on a time crunch, because he needs money really fast for his family. But his core wound comes into play, and that feeling like his power had been taken from him in the past, that core wound comes out to play. And he just goes down this massive corruption arc. And while had he stayed at just fast money for family gets money, I don't go overboard. Morally gray, right? Because then it would have been a positive outcome. Everybody's okay-ish, right? But he just goes off the rails and downward spirals majorly. And so the ultimate result of his actions is like universally bad and inarguably negative. So I would look at your ultimate result of this person's actions, because in theory, morally gray could result in a net positive, but like villainy, like I like to say, morally midnight, is gonna universally result in a universal negative.
Morally midnight, I love that. You should coin that. Put it on merch. Morally midnight.
It's in my author bio.
Oh, I love
morally
that.
Midnight character.
Yeah, and I love that you're bringing up Breaking Bad, because you think about at the start, pretty much everyone, like the whole audience, really sympathized with Walter White, like, because
I did,
right? Because you're like, dude's got cancer, like, of course, you know, like he's doing what he can to save himself. But then it gets to the point where it's like he's letting this woman choke on her vomit and die. And sorry, spoilers, but it's like it gets to a point where it's like, even though he was morally gray and we understood where he was coming from, like you said, it just goes off the rails, and it becomes, you can't really make excuses for him anymore.
His choice of method of making that much money that fast was, you know, not cool, but he starts making like supremely uncool decisions, and it just gets worse and worse, and he keeps getting offered these ways out, and he's just like, no. But I do love that I am the one who knocks.
Right.
I love that so much.
And I think that's also a great example about how you can have sort of a villain MC. A lot of people are worried about the villain MC, and like people won't like him. It's like everyone loved Walter White. Like they don't have
Everybody's
to be likable.
Here for Joe. Like everybody watched Walter. Everybody watched Joe. The importance of writing a morally midnight MC is that it's clear to the audience they're the bad person. Like they can be understandable, but like you don't romanticize them outside of their POV. Right. Like Skylar, her reaction to Walter tells you he's gone too far, right? Like Joe's friends, when they find out their reaction outside of his POV, you've gone too far. If you have a villainous MC, like you need to acknowledge that they are the problem.
Right.
And the people around them acknowledge that as well. That way it's not romanticizing it.
Exactly. And touching on that, that's what the next question is about. Let's talk about villain MCs. How would you recommend writing a villain main character, and how is it different from writing a hero main character? We touched on, don't romanticize outside of their point of view. You can romanticize it within it
because that's their head, and they think whatever they think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But what else would you add to that?
I think I would get a little more technical, since we're talking about how to swap like the hero arc with a villain arc. I would definitely suggest looking into like the negative change arcs. You've got disillusionment, fall, and corruption. Like, disclaimer, all of my information for negative change arc is coming from Creating Character Arcs by K.M. Weiland? I don't know really which way is the right way.
I don't either. It's all good.
And then Save the Cat writes a novel. So those are like recommended reading, just to like throw out there. So you pick your change arc. You can do a flat character arc for a villain, but it's more fun if they have, in my opinion, change arcs are more fun. And then basically, I'm going to use an RPG reference here, because I am officially like the queen of making the worst possible dialogue choices in video games. Like, if there's a chance to like stuff up, I do it on accident all the time. I was playing Valhalla and I started a bar fight on accident because I antagonized the wrong person. But really what you're gonna want to do is you take your change arc and you constantly put your character into what's called pinch points. And I like to ask myself, what is the worst possible decision that they could possibly make in this moment while still staying in character? And then you just force them to make the worst possible decisions they could possibly make. And you do it over and over again until they're where you want them to be. In short.
I love that. But that's like, because I've never written a villain MC. I've written Morally Gray MCs, but I've never written a villain MC, and it's so different from writing like Morally Gray or Hero, because you want them to make mistakes, but you also want them, like, it's a mix of good decisions and mistakes. But with villains, it's like, no, just keep up.
Just go. And in fairness, that is what I did with Vulgaire. Like, my MC in The Gifted King is a prince who meets the Horseman of Chaos, and the Horseman of Chaos says, I'm here to burn your world, but you can do it. And if you do, you can keep a handful of people that you love. Like, you can keep your friends. And Vulgaire's like, I can work with this.
Right.
In his head, he's like, I have a righteous cause. I can do this. We can make this happen. I can trick this guy and it'll all be fine. But he just makes worse and worse and worse decisions repeatedly over and over again. And all of his friends are like, bro. So you just keep pushing him as far as you can push him and just watch him crack apart.
I love that. Oh,
Yeah.
That's so much fun. This question was requested by another one of my patrons over on Patreon, Jay. How would you recommend writing a negative or bastardization arc for a character, taking them from a regular old character, maybe heroic or morally gray, and then turning them into a full-blown villain? Again, we touched on this. We got to have them keep up. But if there's anything else you wanted to add.
I would add some like details that I've noticed. So thank you, Jay, for asking. I have a friend who has like really excellent taste in TV, and they have been recommending me some really good shows. Interestingly enough, they are all like corruption arc shows or fall arc shows. So I have just been like living my best life. I've just been eating them up. I have noticed some common threads. Normally, if you're going for a villain, you've got fall or corruption arc, because disillusionment can actually be a positive thing, but you definitely want to go downhill for these guys. And then one thing that I have noticed is that you're gonna wanna start your MC off with their normal, but you see their flaw, like that fatal flaw, that one thing that is like wrong with them. And you're like, you're not who I thought you were, but you notice it early. So an example would be Marty from Ozark. So he is a bad guy, but he's also the main character, and he goes through a corruption arc, and he starts off, you can tell he's not getting what he wants out of life at work, and he's got some very questionable watching material on his computer, but we don't know what it is yet, right? So that's his like early red flag. That's what early red flags. And then your inciting incident is just gonna like rip the band-aid off that red flag. So whatever they have been like trying to hide or manage or deal with, just rip the band-aid off in your inciting incident, and just, for lack of a better term, just like yeet them off, Simba style in that gif. Just yeet them off the hill. And then you're gonna want, throughout the rest of their arc, you need to put them up against something that they would never, ever lose. So I guess to shorten it, you need to find the one thing that they would never give up in a million years. Like, I'm talking pry it out of my cold, dead hands on this bloody hill that I died on. And that's what they stand to lose if they give up the dark path. because part of corruption arcs is being offered a way out, and they have to constantly turn that way out down. But why? If they leave this arc, they will lose the one thing they would never give up in their entire life. So you're going to want to like imagine what's one thing you would never give up, and then spin that into your villain.
I'm sitting here thinking, what's the one thing I would never give up? And I Butters, are you going to be the part of my corruption arc? Don't put me into this. All right, so what are some common pitfalls and mistakes to avoid when crafting villains?
I would say the first one and the most like glaring thing to avoid, in my opinion, is being bad for the sake of being bad. The villainous monologue. But there are so many ways to avoid the villainous monologue, because sometimes, in fairness, sometimes you need the villainous monologue to like pull some plot pieces together. A friend of mine reminded me yesterday, even in The Incredibles, he's like, you've got me monologuing, and like the villain acknowledges it and does that fourth wall break where it's like, I'm acknowledging this, the audience knows this is happening, and it kind of like makes it more fun. And then deliver on your premise. So if you're here to write villains, you kind of gotta like commit. One thing that I would definitely like to bring up that I think is like a bit more of like a serious topic is to make sure that your villain is a villain because of their choices and not because of trauma. So one thing that happened to Daenerys's season 8 corruption arc is that she was reacting to traumatic experiences instead of choices she had made to deliberately bring this about. And I can't take credit for this idea. It is from a YouTube creator whose name I cannot remember off the top of my head. Like, that's the kitten.
I love it. Come join us, kitten. Come here.
What you want is your villain needs to choose this path every time instead of being like shoved down it by other characters and things outside of their control. Like their corruption arc needs to be fully within their control. Like Anakin's corruption arc is fully within his control. He could have literally just said no, but he said yes. Marty from Ozark could have never started this, or he could have gotten out at like 8 different opportunities. So I would say absolutely make sure it's because of choices and not trauma. Most importantly, I would definitely say label your content warnings, because some authors will like, he's a bad guy. People know that he's gonna do bad guy things. Like, no, you need to say what type of bad guy things he's doing.
Right.
So label your content warnings so that your readers know what they're like in for with this particular bad guy.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's funny because a lot of people, they want the villain to just be like, oh, he's so traumatized. And it's totally fine to write a traumatized villain. But it, like you said, if it's just a reaction to the trauma, it's like, well, that's a victim. You know, like it's like, you know, it's going to be hard for people to be like, oh, they're evil and stuff.
Yeah, like,
you know, you want them to choose this path so that readers can hate them or love to hate them.
Obviously, if there's something on the line that they wouldn't be willing to give up, if they left the path, they would have to give that up. But staying to keep that is still a choice.
Right.
If it's from someone who has experienced so much trauma, a lot of times it's from a place of self-defense or defense of the people that you care about. And that's not the same thing as a corruption arc or a Heathcliff style fall arc where he's just nose diving for the life of him in the wrong direction.
And that's something, and this is like getting into like psychology and technical stuff, but statistically, people who have experienced trauma are more likely to be victims than they are to be predators. Not saying that people who experience trauma can never become predators, because it absolutely happens. But you know, if you're writing the kind of character where they're just reacting to trauma, it's like, well, that's not as realistic as someone who's making the choice to do the bad thing.
A lot of times, some of the worst people are coming from a place of like extreme privilege, like extreme access to resources and things like that. And those are going to be where you're going to find like the worst, because limits have never been imposed on them. And thus, why wouldn't they do said thing?
You're speaking my language. Privileged villains are my favorite because they're the most realistic. It's like, this makes so much sense.
We live in a world with privileged villains.
Right, exactly.
That's why, like, Vogaire is a prince. He's literally like, he's not the firstborn prince, because second son like is a trope and I'm here for it. But like he's a prince. He's literally at the top of their world. So privileged villains usually make they make good ones.
Thanks so much for stopping by. Where can people check out The Gifted King, and where can they find you online?
Thank you so much for having me again. Like, it is an honor to be here. You have done so much for the writing community, and I am still in disbelief that I'm here. You can find The Gifted King. It comes out on September 9th, 2025, and it will be almost everywhere that books are sold. So I have ebooks, I have the paperback, but I do have the exclusive hardback edition. So if you really want the one with the dragon on the cover, make sure you get the hardback one because it's got portraits on the inside. And then as far as where you can find me, I am at Lizabeth Phoenix at all my socials. I am most active on like Instagram and TikTok. I am trying to get back into YouTube, but I am on like TikTok and Instagram most often.
Awesome. Yes, and I will have all the links listed below. Everyone, check it out. Check out Lizabeth Phoenix. Check out The Gifted King. Get on it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So that's all I got for you today. How to Write Romantasy comes out in October, so if you're trying to write your very own fantasy romance, pre-order it today. Even better, if you pre-order, you can receive a bonus digital workbook. All you have to do is submit your proof of purchase. I've got the details in the description below. You can also check out my first writing craft book, Shut Up and Write the Book, or you can check out the first 2 books in my award-winning romantasy series, The Savior's Champion and The Savior's Sister. They're linked below. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I post new videos on Wednesdays and I host live streams on Mondays. And if you want to be alerted as soon as I upload, ring that bell. Bye! Have you subscribed to my channel yet? I mean, you totally should. I post new videos on Wednesdays. I also host live streams on Mondays, and they're super fun. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel and be sure to ring that bell. That way you're alerted as soon as I post new content.